So simple tip that I think would genuinely help every senior golfer. I get golfers coming through the door, needing help, and fundamentally it's always the same thing. It comes back to distance. I get it. As we get older, we get less mobile, we potentially lose our strength as well. We can't swing the club as quickly. But what we have to do is you don't want to kind of fall under this idea that you can't put any effort in to generate distance. So you have to put a bit of force back into the swing, okay, to be able to generate more speed. And the way you're going to do this, I think, is by concentrating very much on the arms and the golf swing. And one of my favorite drills is a very simple pump drill. Now, the key thing with the pump drill, because you'd have heard it before, but the key thing when you're doing it is how you're doing it. So I'm going to kind of show you two ways here. So the first, just to put it into context, I'll get somebody come through the door and they'll do something like so, right? And they'll hit the ball pretty sweetly, but it just doesn't go anywhere. And it makes golf really difficult if you don't hit the ball very far, or really difficult to score nevertheless. And what would happen if I asked them to do a bit of a pump drill? So I'd sort of demonstrate it, and then they'll do something like this. So they'd pick the club up and pull it down. And what you can kind of see here is the whole structure is bent, like my arm's bent. There's not necessarily much going on in terms of the wrist angles. Now, what we want to be doing is getting a sense that we're applying a force to the club, right? So there's a significant difference between this type of motion and this type of motion, okay? So in the latter one, I am really feeling as though I am pushing the club away from me, okay? Like I'm extending the club away from me, okay? Now, not uncomfortably, you know, but like a comfortable element of pushing so I can feel activation in my arm. And that is a force that you're gonna need in the golf swing, okay? So going all sort of this way isn't going to generate itself to any speed. You've got to go this way. You've got to feel like you're really pushing your arms away from your body. And this is going to help you generate much more speed in the golf swing. Now, to put it into context in terms of how intense this pump drill should be, personally, 3 to half a dozen, and you should start to feel it in your arms, okay? So if I was doing it here, 1, 2, 3, yeah, probably I'd say 3. So if you can do, you know, if you're noticing you can do a dozen or more, then there is not enough intensity going on into that type of motion. And again, if you're slightly uncertain of exactly what to do, then what you can also do is sort of, you know, hold the club out in front of you, turn your trail hand upward facing, and just get the same feeling again of applying width and pumping that club up and down. And that's a key thing. Now, what I also mentioned, I did a video a couple of weeks back where I talked about Dustin Johnson's wrist position. And I talked a lot about the flexion. But in that video, I also talked about what we tend to see from the data that's come from Hack Motion is that all professional golfers, or the professional golfers they've been measuring, as they start the downswing, they tend to see an increase in extension. So the lead wrist is generally going back into this type of force. And that's because this type of motion, this extension, gives you the capacity to create wrist cock, okay? So if you do too much flexion, you'll lose the wrist cock. So I want you to, again, when you're doing this pump drill, just make sure that you feel like you've got a good angulation here between the lead arm and the club, and you're pumping that up and down. And then once you start to do this, then you can start to turn your body through with it. And that's going to give you that sort of sense of sort of catapulting that speed through the ball. And again, you're going to do it towards your capacity. But what I am saying is if you're starting to lose distance, or you're starting to get a little bit uncertain as to what you should be working on, although there's a lot of conversation about effortless and how easy do golf swings look. And when we look at Rory McIlroy, he's just so smooth, he doesn't look like he's trying to hit it hard. But you have to bear in mind, he's still swinging the club at 120 miles per hour with the driver. So there's still a tremendous amount of force going on in there. So the likelihood is you guys are going to have to start thinking a bit about this, because this tip works wonders here. And then once you start to incorporate rotation, those hands start to come in, you'll start to get a really nice shape towards your swing, and it will help you out no end. See you guys again really soon.